Hello, everyone. This is episode 41 of the Dresden Files podcast, a member of the Broken Jars Network. And today we've been invaded by Jacob again from the Broken Jars Network.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So let's get to have fun. There's a little bit of news. Jim's website has updated that his tour thing that he's doing at Broomfield, Colorado actually has a different location than they originally said because the original location doesn't exist. So if you want to go there, make sure that you look where it actually is on his website.
Does did the original location close, or was it?
I think they mentioned a bookstore chain that doesn't exist in that area. So there's we're going to do it at a
publisher's part.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that mess up happened, but it's actually going to be called Charles and Second, but the address is still the same at Flatiron Crossing. If you want to go there, be very sure so you don't miss him.
The multiverse is fluid and complicated. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. And he's still going to be at Dragon Con like he usually is, and Phoenix Comic Con. He's going to do a signing with Badali Jewelry there, and he's still going to show up at Salt Lake City Comic Con so Justin can have fun.
I know I keep going back and forth with what I'm going to do for cosplay for that one, and I think I'm going to try and finish off my Verminositor so that I can show up with the Spire Albion design that I had come up with, so that'll be fun.
Nice.
Yeah, and at some point, all of us Dresden fans will talk about Cinder Spires, I'm sure, but for now, we're going to still doing the crazy fan stuff of Dresden Files because we're going to talk about the crazy fan theories and throw our opinions at them.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've had some help from our wizard behind the scene named Josh, because I just kind of put some topics out there. It's these are the crazy fan theories, right? And he just said, yeah, give me all of the stuff. And then he put all of it, and he gave us 3 episodes worth. He's awesome. But the first theory to laugh about is Harry Dresden is the original Merlin.
My favorite part about this theory, though, is some of the crazy minutia that goes into it, is that it's not just good enough for Harry to be the Merlin. One of the nuggets of this theory is that he's like the Benjamin Button Merlin, where he's aging backwards. So
he has to age backwards, but he's not doing that now. So how does that work?
Right. And I think part of that is that's part of the original Merlin's one of his legends, right? And so they're just mashing those in together, but it's just, honestly, so most of these theories I just kind of laugh at when I read them online, and I'm like, haha, no. But I guess today we get to go in and be other than, a lot of these theories wind up crazy because they're mostly just completely unsupported and throw sticky shit at the wall and see what happens. Like for the Merlin, what kind of evidence is there even? So... yeah, so the aging backwards is part of his actual legend. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't believe this one, so it's hard for me to try to support it, but the whole thing, he needs to time travel at some point in order for all the laws to be broken. Right. And we know that the Merlin did that, sort of. So also, and I think the connection with Demon Reach is a big thing, is that he's the warden because he was the warden.
Right. So on the time travel thing, though, which I've wanted to bring this up for a while anyway, and what better than the show that I'm on? But people always are like, the Merlin time traveled, and that's technically breaking the laws. And I have a tough time with that because technically you could probably say that it's more like he did his thing in the 4th dimension. Because Bob is he didn't time travel. He didn't do this in the past. He did this at multiple points in time. And so, yeah, sure. From a linear perspective, he was time traveling. But when you consider 4th dimensional, physics, trying not to get too Doctor Who here and too, Stephen Hawking or anything like that. But technically, it's more like he did it outside of time, and it just happened all at the same time. So, and Bob kind of implies that, look, he's showing you the highlight reels because that's as much as he could gear it down to make it so you could understand, because Demon Reach had to gear it down so Bob could understand. And so this is 2 layers of kindergarten speak down the line from what actually happened. And so, from from a somewhat like I'm putting forth the argument that he didn't time travel so much as he created Demon Reach outside of time and therefore kind of timeless. So it's technically always existed and always will exist, other than other complications like we see in Cold Days, for example, where, it might explode. That could be a thing. But that would never happen for reasons. But that's kind of the way that I understood it. And so people are like, well, he like time traveled and did the thing. And so unless there's another piece that I'm not thinking about, that's not actually evidence in my mind. Like he more violated the fourth dimension than the swimming against time itself,
Yeah, it just doesn't feel very satisfying to me, and I kind of don't want Harry to be the Merlin just because I think it would be very unsatisfying if he was. Like, Bob has trouble understanding what happens in Demon Reach and all the spells that's on a single stone. Harry can't possibly have done that.
Harry's
basically
not
been learning
Merlin.
from Bob.
Right.
I think Harry might become the Merlin. I don't really want to be
right.
And I think Harry's descendant from Merlin.
Well, from a manner of speaking, to use a Star Wars analogy, Anakin technically was taught from Yoda because Qui-Gon was taught from Yoda, but I
know that it doesn't specifically say that Ebenezer in those books, or he says it's from master to pupil or whatever. But I think it's actually from in a familial line, it's Harry's grandfather, and he gets the books later. I think Ebenezer got it
we don't
from.
Have proof yet.
This is just theory. This is not.
Well, and that's the funny thing about extrapolation is that we've got a solid line between Harry and Ebenezer, but we've got the dotted line that we assume maybe Ebenezer's descended from the Merlin, but that doesn't jive with me either. But it's possible, right? So
that's not a crazy fan theory. That's just a fan theory.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
it just kind of feels like they're from the same island. Obviously, they're related.
Right. So the problem with the whole Harry is the Merlin thing is that because there isn't a lot of evidence and there's a lot of other evidence against it, is that then you wind up with other crazy theories to try and fill in the gaps of the initial. So, like, what if the Merlin is a mantle, because after Cold Days, everything is a mantle. Woo! Everybody gets a mantle, and if you get sufficient power, it's a mantle, right, guys? So that's the other one that's kind of fun for the Merlin theory, because Harry very clearly, at least from our perspective, he was born. He had, a mortal parent and things like that. Like, so he's not thousands of years old and just showed up. It's not like he fell out of the sky,
Two mortal parents. I mean, wizards are still mortals.
Wizards, yeah, it's slightly more differenter. So
that's one of those things where, like, to pull a phrase from Futurama, he did the nasty and the pasty, and so, like his own dad somehow.
Right. Which that's a great and yet sickening analogy. But yeah, no, and so that's kind of the thing where it's like.
But then you would have to have sex with your own mother and know it's your mother.
Well, right? He could be like down the line, because in Futurama it was his grandmother.
Oh, grandmother, and he didn't recognize his own grandmother, like when she showed him shit.
Right. for the bit, but so, and honestly, I think the whole Harry is the Merlin thing stems from the fact that we're picking up on the fact that almost everybody can kind of see Harry eventually becoming the Merlin, kind of like he's the warden now. And not just a warden, So I think you pick up on that, and you pick up on things like, well, he's got to do things with time travel, and the Merlin did things with time travel, and then suddenly this is a theory. And I'm like, it's all but a conspiracy theory, because if he had more than a shred of proof and a gut feeling, it wouldn't be a crazy fan theory. It would be either a fan theory or it'd be canon, like it would be written by now. But yeah, the Merlin thing is always kind of funny to me.
Josh kind of pointed out that there's the whole word of Jim about the Merlin's English when people are trying to talk about the British dude in Demon Reach, and it's be so unintelligible. And it's not exactly explicitly stating that Harry can't be the Merlin, but it is kind of like implying that Harry can't be the Merlin because English would be too different.
Right. Well, but I mean, theoretically, if he aged backwards and over the course of 1,000 years, he would have had time to pick up, the changes in English, because it's not like there's an actual break in Old English and Middle English and then current, English just because we study it that way, right? It did evolve over time. So if he was a contiguous being for that entire time, but that's the other thing you got to think of, is that at the very least, it's relatively assumed that he was at the Battle of Hastings, and from some of the research we did previous, right, he's potentially from the Roman era. So either he is the oldest non-immortal character in the Dresden verse, especially if he's still Harry. Like that's where it's like you got to have the whole he fell out of the sky, or he was buried under a rock, or he was frozen in time somewhere or something. Like there's so many things that you've got to have happen for this theory to line up exactly kind of in that way in my mind. It just doesn't
It's
happen.
a crazy fan theory for a reason.
Right.
So let's move on to another one of Cowl and Kumori. We'll take up some amount of time. Specifically, let's laugh at Cowl and Kumori being Harry and Molly.
I mean, that's such a stupid theory. And by now, it's really stupid, right? When it first appeared, I mean, it was kind of theoretically we could think about it, but by this point, oh.
Well, come on now, you gotta do something more than throw rocks, because this one doesn't smell as bad to me, and it survived permutations with the fact that mirror is going to be a thing in my mind. So I kind of
alternative universe might be the only argument I could see.
Right,
it's Harry and Molly from another. But even then, no.
Because the hard part to shake, the part that's unresolved and is kind of the big linchpin to this theory and to that kind of idea in general, is that his magic is familiar to Harry somehow, and he never met Simon Pietrovich. So it's either it's similar because he's White Council, or is it similar because he knows him somehow, some way? Or is it even similar, the sinister part, because it is him from another universe, from the future or something like that, Which, honestly, Cold Days, again, kind of breaks this one down in a way, because it couldn't be our Molly without a whole fucking lot of other changes. Because clearly our Molly's not just going to resort to necromancy as her de facto thing now. So is she an alternate, or is something else going on there? But this one is hard to dismiss. Honestly, I still hold on to the fact that Jim Butcher's a fucking liar and it's Justin. But we'll see what happens. So
yeah, DED dead.
That's what would make the most sense to me. But DED dead. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't come back from the dead, right? Somehow,
right?
It's a world of magic.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we'll see when it finally does get revealed, of course. But yeah,
there is an underworld, and it's technically possible to maybe break out of the underworld. So
right, yeah, like none of the fact that he's fucking dead, doesn't imply that there isn't a world of magic out there, and 100 other things could bring him back. And so that's one where it's like, that one gets 51%, but like the Cowl is Pietrovich or future Harry or something, like those theories I can't just dismiss outright because it would be fun. And I really, even if it's not fully right and I don't fully support it as like my main theory, the whole like Simon faked his own death and faked his death curse thing is super compelling. So
I like that one best. The one thing that seems to be in supporting of Cowl being Harry is that Cowl is described as tall, but I dislike this because is he 6'9" fucking tall? Is like, if anyone is taller than Harry, it really matters because they're 7 foot tall, which is Vattung and Rasheed. And I'll get to that later. But just be tall is 6'4". There's still 5 inches there.
And it could be, I mean, kind of like you're a bodybuilder and you see like that dude is buff, but he's not like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Buff,
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it kind of goes back to what we got from Butcher himself and his whole, people are tall because I wanted Harry to be tall, and it's not fun when he picks on short people. So Cowl very could be of a height with Harry or better than, just to get the whole like, well, the bad guys have got to be bigger and scarier than Harry, right? So, but I honestly, in my mind, Cowl is always just this kind of short guy, and mostly just, I mean, short for Harry, and mostly just because I get the old and decrepit and kind of see him half hunched over due to age. And so in my mind, Cowl is some kind of like Dresden versus Darth Palpatine, where he's like, half decrepit and he got hurt by magic or whatever. Like, it's not like you see his face, but that's kind of what I imagine whenever I see Cowl and hear Marsters do the craggly voice and everything like that, so.
Yeah. And I really dislike the whole Kumori being Molly, because when Kumori's talking about the good that would happen with people being alive forever, there's, like, as Harry points out, like, there's a lot of bad sides to that as well. And Molly is smarter than that.
Is
like,
she,
she's
though?
wiser than that.
Is she though? That's the kind of argument I would think maybe not now, but up until maybe changes Molly would make.
And
I don't think so. I think, like, at the very least, she understands that, like, there's a time to die.
Our Molly does, right? But that's kind of where you get into the alternate and what in the future. And to be fair, though, it is not at all a stretch that it's not like Molly hasn't used her powers for bad already with good intentions. So now, instead of making her mind magic, substitute in necromancy. What the shit? Of course she'd do exactly the same thing. Instead of using her magic to fix the addiction, say her friends did OD or the baby died and she was gifted in necromancy, you don't think she would have brought one of those people back with good intentions?
That is a little different. And, like, she might have done something like that, but trying to end death has so many more ramifications, and I think Molly is wise enough to understand that.
But Kumori is also... It's also implied to me, anyway, that Kumori is very old, which means she's been at it for a while. And so, like, if her power has grown to a point and her understanding has grown to a point, it's like, sure, maybe 18-year-old Molly wouldn't make that decision. But there's a lot of history there. Like, if she's had 40 plus years, if she's lived through a couple of wars and things, seen how things are terrible, and wants to try and fix all of that, it's not so crazy that I could dismiss it outright. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's not like the craziest thing we've even talked about this show so far.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Justin, that, like, Molly always came off as a bit of a loose cannon. Like, she's been reined in by Dresden. So if she had enough time away from him, I think she could go either bad or just kind of batshit.
See, and I didn't get either of those vibes from Molly, but I wanted to highlight the fact for a second that you said Harry Dresden, the loose cannon of the White Council, reined Molly in. So it's like, you can imagine what they think. They're losing their fucking mind.
Yeah.
So
I think there's another point that kind of disproves that Cowl is Harry in any way, is that when Cowl picks up Bob changes. Bob does not recognize him as Harry, even if it's an alternate Harry.
Yeah, it really depends on how they're doing. I mean, if it is sort of a multiverse idea, I mean, even though they're technically the same, are they still the same to other people? To steal something from Flash, they vibrate at different frequencies, so that it throws off people from our universe.
So
I assume that they'd still be recognizable enough.
The fun fact is that, like, which one's more interesting for the plot, right? So, because, like, is it more interesting that Bob's like, wait a minute, you're not the real Harry, or is it more interesting that he's able to abscond with them because they have quote unquote the same metaphysical DNA, even though they've made different life choices and things like that? So, like, that one, it just strikes me that one's going to be totally plot relevant if it does come up. Or does he already have his own Bob? Because honestly, up to a decision that we know when it happened temporally, they're identical. So he does have a Bob, and so really the more exciting thing now that I'm thinking about is what if he unlocked evil Bob, and that's part of why he's doing some of his stuff. So
I would totally read a Bob. I mean, that'd be, since with all that knowledge, they could be slinging around some serious magic. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I want Evil Bob to come back because I don't believe he's gone. But let's go on more about Cowl. Like, Cowl is Simon. Because I think that's, like, the most compelling version of who Cowl is that we can point out.
I like that one because I feel like it's the double agent thing, where it's like, Cowl is going to show up at an inconvenient time and reveal himself, and it's going to be one of those, like, Luke, I am your father moments, where, like, everyone's like, no, you son of a bitch. And especially I could see Ebenezer being like, look.
Oh, please don't say that. And also, did this freeze for anyone else, or?
Yeah, he Justin froze for a minute, so he'll come back
So
in a second.
I'll just take over and say no. If Ebenezer's fucking no. I will. That's it. I'm done with Dresden Files.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of at least pain for Ebenezer to have to realize that his friend that he was very broken up over having been killed in Summer Night is actually the bad guy that's doing all the terrible things. It's like
That's
would
why I was
be
thinking
a lot of
that's why
pain.
his
So
magic
it
was
seems like
kind of-
Jim would do it.
Why his magic was kind of familiar. Because maybe like they're good friends, him and Eb. Maybe they like share magic. Maybe they've trained together or something. Their magic patterns might be kind of similar, and maybe that's why it was similar. Or felt
Martha
familiar.
Liberty and the other guy, the one that was an asshole in Summer Night, pointed out that like Simon taught Justin taught Dresden, so any familiarity might be there.
Yeah, that too. Of course, actually, that's totally true. I didn't think about that. Maybe that would make a lot of sense, but not Ebenezer. No, I won't have it. More or the Morn's mentor. Sure, that makes sense. I could see that.
If Cowl is Simon, then that kind of explains why Cowl/Simon might be making comments about like the White Council is like corrupted from the inside. It's because he was part of the corruption.
Yeah. You back, Justin? It's not.
Okay.
It was back. Don't change.
So, but I think that's the most compelling. And then like in the RPG files, it says that Simon has a female apprentice named Larissa Yevtushenko. I hope I pronounced that right. And maybe that is Kumori, since they seem to be personally loyal to each other. And obviously he's kind of teacher, mentor person to her.
Did Justin have that apprentice, or did Simon, did you say?
Simon.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm kind of getting a the shoe fits kind of thing here.
It does. It really does. But then it's like the one problem you have to really explain away is it looks like Simon used his death curse, or it was heavily implied that
he's just very powerful, and they assumed it was his death curse.
Exactly.
Power is very powerful.
Yeah, so I think it was
debunk crazy. It's just a good fan theory now.
Yeah, and it's just all kind of hinging on the fact that they're similar, and like, oh, this person was important, and now he's dead. Like, I don't think he's really dead. It's just kind of feels that way. Yeah. Another one that is interesting about Cowl and Kumori, specifically about Kumori, is what if Kumori is Elaine? Which I don't have enough to disprove, but I still don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
I mean,
I think Elaine might end up betraying him. I don't want her to. I kind of like Elaine, actually.
Yeah, we can't prove that she's not infected, say, but she's just, I don't know. And Elaine would also have known that there's like problems inside the White Council, which kind of adds into the whole Kumori saying that White Council is corrupted as well. But I don't think so.
No, I don't like it.
All right. Well, let's talk about Ebenezer a little bit, actually, specifically about the Black Staff. It's like, is the Black Staff Mother Winter's walking stick?
I mean, I don't think it's that crazy of a theory that it might be, but it might just be an artifact made by Merlin, made to take the repercussions of black magic. I don't know. I don't think it's a terrible like theory or anything. Actually, it's one of the less crazy fan theories.
Right, but I guess my question is, why would it matter if it was? Is it just because it needs to be a super powerful actual staff, or
Well, as it's indicated, implied, whatever you want to say, that basically it takes the consequences from, and also gives like very destructive killing power. It was not clear whether the staff gave him the power to just kind of suck the life out of 100 people, or if that's just something he can do.
Yeah, I mean, Well, I assume anyone could really, like anyone who's sufficiently powerful enough, like say Ebenezer, can just do that. But the problem is dealing with the consequences. And that's from what we've been told is what the Black Staff handles. And considering that we know that Mother Winter had a walking stick and it's gone, and Mother Winter also likes to everything to be dark and deadly and death, it kind of makes sense that her walking stick would also be very deadly.
Well, she is basically, you know, the aspect of death in a lot of like in several mythologies. That's like her.
Mm-hmm. It's just like, so we think that it was taken at the Battle of Hastings, and we know that there was really big things happening with, say, the Winter Court at that time, because that's when they took over from the Norse gods to defend the outer gates. And maybe Mother Winter wanted to help out the whole defend from evil thing, or maybe whoever was the Black Staff had to steal it from her. I wonder who that was.
How long ago was the Battle of Hastings?
I don't know.
Oh, bad. I mean, that's what, like, I'm not even sure. I mean, it was a long time ago.
When was the Battle of Hastings?
In 66.
Yeah.
So, 1,000 years.
And yeah, and Ebenezer would have gotten it when the mantle, let's say the Black Staff, at 1884 or 85. So.
Oh, whoop-de-doo, look at this, another mantle.
Well,
I did
it's more
air
of a
quotes for anyone
it's-
listening pure audio. You can't see that. But
right. At least I always got. It felt like a title, not like an actual, like, you know, winter night kind of mantle thing.
Yeah, but you just like the way mantle get thrown around, especially on the subreddit now. I just feel like making like that Oprah meme, where it's like you get and you get with mantles. Like you get a mantle, you get a mantle.
I mean, whether or not it's a mantle, he certainly has like a staff of power with it, which is close enough for wizards. I don't know.
Yeah, it does.
But let's talk about more wizards. And as I mentioned this earlier, it's like Rasheed is Vattung. It's kind of my personal crazy fan theory because I can't disprove it. Like both of them are obscenely tall, taller than Dresden. Both of them have a missing eye. And even to the point in Cold Days, Harry says, like, wait, your job is so secret that your missing eye gets a disguise? And who's to say it's not another disguise? Both of them are involved in the whole protecting the outer gates or so. And they both mess with time. I can't disprove that they're not the same person. I've never seen them in the same room together.
That's just like the archetypical. Is that person really that person? I've never seen them in a room together. It's Clark Kent, Superman.
It's just like, I don't know. I made that joke to myself once. It's like, shit. I don't know.
I can't remember having them ever been in the same. I assumed they were both there in the Battle and Changes. But it's not said or confirmed in any ways.
I don't think Rasheed was there. Not confirmed.
Not confirmed,
that
no, but I assumed he was one of the hidden cloaked figures of the Great Council. Which he could have been. We saw Vattung, and if they're the same person...
Well, yeah, if they're the same person, then yes, he was there. But like the one thing that kind of sticks out is that Rasheed swears by Islamic oaths. Like he says, blood of the prophet, referring to Muhammad and all that. So why would Vattung, a Norse god, be doing that? And that's like the only thing I can't explain. But I just...
Maybe the mantle of Odin and the mantle of Santa and stuff get bestowed upon a mortal, and it happened to be Rasheed and a Muslim.
I don't know. It's just...
I mean, we're talking crazy fan theories, right?
Yes, this is my crazy theory.
Yeah.
I just...
Who knows? Maybe Odin and Muhammad were like bros back in the day. So now he's like, hey, man, he's like, you know, getting all that stuff going on.
Well, when I was looking into Norse mythology stuff, there was like some older theories from people that basically the people who became Norse actually originated from Anatolia in Turkey. And so maybe there's a connection there, except that was completely different time periods because Muhammad wasn't around at that point.
It's like it's
a stretch.
Almost.
Yeah, it's a stretch.
Are you back, Justin? I can see he's in the call now.
He's working on it, I think. He's still having problems. All right, but
okay.
Let's move on to another. So Fitz, the poor kid in Ghost Story, is MacFinn's child.
McFinn?
MacFinn from Full Moon, the loop guru that was cursed in his family to have a child going on until the end of days. And then he died, presumably without a child. Yay, Justin's back.
I don't. Why? What is the arguments for this being the case? I don't see it.
Well, let's see. The fact that MacFinn is supposed to have a child, and we don't see him having one. Fitz is kind of just an orphan. He could have just been a bastard, and Fitz meaning literally bastards. Like maybe Tara West had the baby and then just left him because he wasn't a wolf. And Fitz grew up in Chicago because that's where MacFinn was, I guess. And then the whole thing that, let's see, his description is that he's got bronze skin, nearly golden eyes, and is a redhead, which kind of fits the whole Tara having brown skin and ambery eyes. So maybe there's enough of a familiar connection there. Also, the fact that he can hear ghosts is kind of like he's a little magical. Maybe he's a little bit more than magical. I don't know.
Okay, sure. This is a really crazy fan theory because I feel like there's no substance to it at all.
I like it because it's compelling and there isn't it's not very high risk, to the Dresden Files. Unless he shows up in Peace Talks or the BAT. So this was one of the more fun ones that I read, but partially just because I'm not super emotionally invested into it, and it gives an otherwise oddly disconnected character some connection to the rest of the Dresden verse. Then I'm a poor orphan kid that I helped while I was a ghost and nobody cares. Because other than maybe the director, not very many people were like, oh man, there was so much that happened in Ghost Story that was good,
Ghost Story was a good book.
Just had to get that jab in there somewhere, so it was clumsy, but I got it.
I think there'll be I hope there'll be a side story. Following up on Fitz and the guys, at least.
Yeah. At the very least, he should be in the Paranet. And we can find out what's happening in the Paranet soon. Hopefully. Peace talks, please. Yeah.
It's never happening. I've lost faith.
No.
It hinges on the idea of MacFinn's curse still continuing after full moon. We don't know that.
And
right, and that's
werewolf. When does it activate? Why is he even scared of that low rent with a sorcerer? If he can turn into a big bad fucking loop guru.
The point was MacFinn didn't want to kill people, and it takes an idiot with a stick to fuck up his circles. So I doubt he was really afraid of. He wasn't afraid of Dresden. And I doubt he was afraid of much else other than somebody's going to fuck up his circles.
No, he's talking about Fitz. Fitz was scared of
I got you.
That one dude.
I know Fitz might be a good kid and probably wouldn't want to kill people out of hand, but I'm pretty sure he would kill that guy if he could.
And it also depends on how much of the werewolf lore you're taking, though, because MacFinn had understood that he was a werewolf, but if you go by the whole, all you do mostly is you black out, from some other werewolf lore and things like that, where they don't always fully understand that they're the beast, then maybe that's Fitz thing. But I think if he's an orphan and he's in the inner city and he's with his gang of people and people don't just mysteriously disappear on the full moon, that's probably one of the biggest marks against the thing. So
there might still be something about the curse needs to be triggered in some way. Otherwise you have a infant baby that transforms with the full moon to be a terrible.
I was thinking puberty or something, but he is a teenager, so
yeah, I don't know. It could be a little bit after puberty, manhood. I don't know. It's a crazy fan theory for a reason.
If we go by old school stuff, then puberty is kind of manhood.
I don't know. It's a crazy fan theory. All right, let's get to something that's much more complicated. To the point that when I put this on the notes, Josh basically said, yeah, good luck with that one. So we're talking about Mac and whoever Mac might be. There's just so many theories of who he could be. And some things are kind of supportive. Other things are just throwing shit at walls. But good luck with that one, he said.
Who is Mac? Well, he's definitely some kind of powerful supernatural entity is what I get the impression from. That's retired.
Yeah, he's out.
Who could that be? Yeah,
Whatever
he's
that
out.
means.
Is he an angel that somehow was just like, no, I'm giving up all this. I'm not gonna do anything anymore. I'm just gonna retire and run a bar.
Well, let's see. There's like the popular theories, whether or not they're right. It's like he's the white god. He's Cain. He's Dagda from Irish myths, or he's the original Merlin. He's a former white knight, or maybe he's an angel, or Heimdall from the Norse mythologies, or maybe even an outsider himself. These are just what I found searching through the subreddit.
The two that I like the most of all those are either he's the original Merlin that somehow attained immortality, or something, or whatever, or he's an outsider who's actually not a pure chaotic evil being, who's like, fuck this shit, fuck you guys, I'm running a bar.
I mean, the bar thing kind of makes me think of Dagda, which a lot like other people in other mythologies, like Dionysus is like he did the whole like beer and festival stuff. I'm not that familiar with him, but
yeah, wasn't Dagda the one that there was a huge post a couple months ago on the subreddit where I was like, it was one of the ones where I read that and I was like, a lot of that really fits up. So to me, that's not one of the crazier theories as opposed to the whole he's Jesus / the white god / Cain / it's like, because some of these theories take us down a path similar to like Supernatural, where it's like God exists, but he just fucking hates everything and he gave up.
Yeah.
Or
have you seen all of Supernatural up until the current stuff?
No, I was telling a friend last night, I tapped out in season 9, so yeah, I'm a little behind. But like after 9 seasons, like
I understand you, because it actually after season 5 and up until I think actually 9 or something, 9, 10, it gets like each season gets a little worse, but it actually started picking up again for me past 9.
And I think they were saying that too, but it's like. Yeah, okay. I mean, at some point we might continue, because what got us into it in the first place is it was around season 7 or 8, and it's like, really, 8 seasons can't be wrong, so like that's kind of what got us into the show in the first place. But
it's very good, actually. I really like it.
Right. So like things that are less crazy theories for him, like I could see maybe former white knight or something like that, some things like that. Yeah, sorry, that's what I mean. Because like things that get him out, but like an outsider, like outsiders want to destroy reality. Like it's kind of like he's made out of Mordite, but for some reason that doesn't like warp reality around him and burn down the bar. Like even if he's a good guy, kind of that's one of those things that I feel like his nature implies it, and maybe that's just because the outsiders we've seen. But knowing what I know about like the Cthulhu mythos and that Jim keeps tacking more and more onto that for the outsiders, like no, I must say that's a hard no from me. But like that's not even a crazy theory. That's like, other than just throwing shit out there, like that's just, there's no way in my mind anyway.
I mean, I really like something like Dagda because it's like he's still that person. It's not like if he was a former Winter Knight, then he no longer has the Winter Mantle, and therefore he wouldn't be, say, immortal or able to withstand a gut shot or any
That's what he was
those
before
things
he was the Winter Knight.
But here's the main thing.
It has to be immortal.
Here's the main thing about Dagda, though, right? Dagda is similar to Dionysus in the fact that the main compelling thing is that Dagda weren't they one of the party gods, where like they are one of the gods of alcohol, right?
Yeah.
What is he out from?
Well,
that's the main thing, because the only thing we know anything that's compelling about Mac, other than the fact that he seems really fucking tough for a human at times, is literally the words "I'm out." And so that's more of a John Wick style "I'm out," or like I went out to go buy all these white clothes and aprons because I hate dirty shit and stains. Like I'm out getting the groceries. Like no, to me, it's always been implied he's some kind of watcher type. And so I still feel like we don't know what he is because it hasn't been revealed to us. Like Butcher's got some other organization or some other component he's going to work in. But that's kind of why I'm saying like he feels more Winter Knight because, he's out. He's retired. He doesn't do the killing anymore. He doesn't do that thing. Dagda fits every other thing about him, except I wouldn't know why a party god would be out, because it has something to do with the cycle, maybe in a way that we don't realize. And like all of the deities play a role into that, even like Hermes and Dionysus and whatever. But like, that's the main thing that's the piece that kind of doesn't make it fit to me. So.
Well, okay, so the things that we know about Mac is he says he's out from what, but probably assumed it connected to the outsiders and the whole outer gates. And I'm at the very least going to point the fact that he's friendly with Vattung to the point he made him laugh in Cold Days, which is probably assumed to be a big thing to do. And then he flatters Mab in Skin Game. He says, may your scales always come to balance. And she like, oh, you flatterer. It's like he's very friendly with these people who are connected to it. So maybe he's connected to the outer gates. He's just not a part of it anymore.
Would you say that, because presumably the fact that Winter's entire fucking job is defending the outer gates, and that presumably the Winter Knight would be the tip of that spear, that just maybe that still fits all of those pieces,
Maybe, except it still has to explain why he's, we presume to be immortal, or able to withstand all the crap that he did, like gut shot, bar attackings, things like that.
Right, sure. But yeah, I mean, there's some unanswered questions for sure. But other than that, like I can see some of those things. So what, he's friendly with who? You say Vattung, and certainly it was Vattung as his mantle, but maybe he also knows that he's Santa Claus. And maybe he also knows that he's Odin, because Harry knows those things. And so it's not outside the realm of possibility that other people know those things. And that's why I'm like, he was friendly with who? He was friendly with...
Well, I'm saying
Winter
that person
Court
that
people.
has 3 masks, like they're friendly with that person. And
but that's what I'm saying. He's friendly with Vattung, aka Santa Claus. He's friendly with Mab, and he's against the outsiders. So yes, crazy fan theory, tenuous kind of circumstantial evidence. But that's part of why, like with Mac, I'm just still kind of on the fence with stuff like that. But now out of the ones that we've mentioned, like out of those things, like the white god, the Jesus thing, I'm bringing up from the subreddit because those kind of go hand in hand. Like those are right out. Like the outsider thing, I think today's the first time I heard about that. It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
I don't remember what post I drew that from. I just found all the crap I could find with crazy or theory.
Right. The fallen angel, like, okay, that if you really want to go the white god route, there's some room for argument there. But like, I think the 2 main ones that fit for me anyway are Dagda and the fact that he's a former Winter Knight. And that's the fun thing about former assassins. If you watch a lot of those movies, or the one that I saw last was John Wick, that's why I keep drawing parallels there, is that maybe he did enough to curry enough favors to kind of get some of those things. Because it's not like he's out and he lost the mantle and then Mab like sucked his soul. Like maybe he made deals with other Fae to help make these things happen, like to give him other powers.
He did have the accorded neutral territory. I assume that needed to have some amount of favor in order to achieve.
Right. Considering like he and Marcone are like the only 2 dudes who are like signatories of the Accords, everybody else is an organization or a nation of some kind.
Yeah, so, for clarification, I don't think Mac is a signatory. He just has neutral territory and good beer.
It's still kind of open. Like I know a lot of people hold that opinion, and that's probably mostly true. But somebody had to work that into the Accords. So if he's not a signatory, he's buddies with one. So he's like half a step removed. And who? Because that's the other thing. Like he's neutral. So why his bar? Why not like 100 other things you could think of? Why not a monastery out in somewhere else other than it's plot relevant for the Dresden Files? Like. Somebody had to do that, so Butcher has to have an in-universe reason why that's a thing. And it's not like Mac just showed up and started making delicious beer and found out just enough about magic so that he could do the 13 pillars and the 13, things to diffuse magical energy. Like he's in the universe somehow. So if he's not a signatory or was a signatory, he's like best buddies with someone who is.
And I'd put money, maybe a small amount of money, but still money, on it being Mab, because I just remember in Proven Guilty, both Lily and Fix and Maeve remembered his lemonade, and like they wanted some more of it. It's like they're going there regularly, and Thomas is going there probably more just because Harry was going there and he wanted to hang out with his brother. But Mab took out the bullet in Cold Days is like kind of as returning a favor, because obviously she couldn't do that without balancing the scales. And maybe it's because she knows that he was involved, and like she's being nice to him.
Right. And it's Mab.
Yes.
So let's just
And
make sure
I'd
the
put,
Queen
like,
of Air and Darkness,
$1.50.
the fucking boogeyman, was nice to you.
And it's the Unseelie Accords. She's the queen of Unseelie.
Right.
So it's like she's the one who did it, in my opinion.
But that's an interesting point that you mentioned. That actually, I could see that being because it's neutral ground and somebody violated the Accords. Maybe that was her duty, and less returned favor, so much as because you're neutral territory and these are my Accords, I have to repair that. And that's kind of where later on she gets hers on people like Nicodemus who fuck with her Accords, because that's her job, like one of her many jobs. But
yeah, and an
I don't know.
outsider that she is defending against came in and fucked up his bar.
Right. Yeah, so I'm not saying that's the thing, but at the moment it fits right. It feels right. So
yeah. All right. I mean,
so that just kind of muddies the waters more. But right, like if I had to cast a vote right now, I'd say he's totally former Team Winter. So
in some fashion.
And honestly, it kind of fits, like, sorry, one final point. It kind of fits with the whole, like, I could see him being a post-war vet, and the reason why he doesn't talk about shit is because, you know, he's got PTSD or he's seen some shit and he doesn't want, like, to leak that, you know, or whatever, where that's the horrors of war, and that's in the past, and I'm going to try and leave it there. You know, I don't know. Like, now I'm just making shit up, but it's like, that feels more and more right the longer I think about it.
The level of kind of making shit. Josh points out that kind of if Mac is Kane, that probably Kane in the short stories is like that would just be ironic. I'm probably not using that correctly, but I don't know. Right. Let's move on to another thing that's also going to probably make us tear our hair out. Say, who fixed Little Chicago?
I don't know. It is tearing me apart. I mean, like, I don't know, man. It's time traveling Harry is what I'm thinking, probably.
I think that's the best moment we'll see of a time traveling Harry, but I don't know.
Grandfather paradox. So, like, I like it, but I can't resolve the paradox. So there's got to be something else that we don't understand there. I always felt like it was Lash on some level, you know, but it had to be it has to be something we don't know, because even Bob's like, that's fucking scary, right? And he's a talking skull, so you know.
Yeah. So the support for, say, Harry is that, like, Harry can get through his wards. He knows how they work, and he knows exactly where it is, and he would know where the problem is. And if Bob was in the room, he can make him forget it, like kind of cut off your old Bob type thing. Like, there are times in that book that Bob is not in the room, so Harry can kind of get past it and not have to deal with anything. The only person there would be Mr.
So the other problem I have with this, though, is cause and effect. Like, the implication was that if this was fucked up, it was going to kill Harry. Okay? So if Harry survived the explosion, which would have been the impetus for him to later go back in time and resolve the problem, he had to have survived not only the blast, but also with it intact enough to go back in time to fix it in the first place. Like, that's like, at the very least, if it didn't kill him, I have a tough time believing that he wasn't, like, missing all his arms and legs, or, you know, some other horribly gruesome things. And so, like, that's the thing. It's like, even if he survived to go back and fix it, he was fucked, you know?
Well, that's depending on the fact that he did try to do it and it exploded, but we don't actually need that to have happened. Like, for example, with the first time he's going to do it, and then he gets that serendipitous call from Molly that broke everything that he was trying to do and basically saved his life. If the timing of that is so particular that maybe something like that did happen, and then another version of Harry did realize that there was a problem, or say Bob did, and Harry fixed it, and then he's able to go back and do things. It's not necessary for it to have exploded.
Well, if you're saying another version of Harry, like, okay, sorry, I just finished Rick and Morty this weekend, so I got caught up. So unless we're saying there's a council of Harry Dresdens out there to make sure that this Harry Dresden makes it, You know, like that's kind of my thing is like, if we're going temporally, then we need to ignore the multiverse for just a minute, because otherwise that puts a spin on this that will never resolve and opens it up impossibly large. But if we're talking temporally, he had to fix it, which means he had to known it was broken, which means he had to have survived the fact that it was broken to get to the point in the future where he got the skills and the knowledge to go back in time to fix it. Like that's a closed loop. And so unless we hand wave that away, and sometimes authors do that, you know, like unless somebody else somehow fixed it in the original timeline, and then, you know, the Odin's like, oh, by the way, we need to close this loop, so you need to go back and do it this time or something. Like some other piece had to
and I think that loop is going to have to close, and we get to see him do the time travel thing, because remember, we also don't know who got into the car crash with Harry, or who's following him around at the police station, which, you know, it could just be time traveling Harry, make sure he's out of the house or still alive or whatever. But considering Rasheed is what got Harry onto the whole bad things happening and proven guilty, with what Bob says, it has to have been hindsight, and knowing that there's like something temporally happening with Rasheed there, it makes sense if Rasheed also said, you have to go close that loop.
Or if Rasheed just did it in the first place. But maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he would have, though, because like he likes Harry and he put him in the nudges and things like that, but he wasn't going to bat for him, I felt like, until a turncoat. You know, because he showed up ready to throw down thinking that Harry is the Dark Lord in turncoat. So for him to go out of his way to save him. Like,
say after turncoat, in the future, when Rasheed needs to like realize that there's a loop that needs to be closed, and then also like that kind of leads to the hindsight thing of like, you had to do that thing and take care of the black magic and proven guilty.
Fair enough. I mean, that's the fun thing about time travel. If you throw this disc far enough out into the future, it'll still come back, but it was future Rasheed. So even he didn't know at the time, 3 books later, but he probably knew way later. So yeah, it's one of those tough theories. And I mean, I'm more on board with Andreas, where it's like, I'm just not 100% sure. Like when I read it, I thought it was Lash and it was a closed loop, and people worry about the guy who hit him off the road. And I always felt like Thomas was the guy following him. And I think I conflate that with other stories where it was Thomas. And so like, there are some of those things where it's like, to me, it was never this big mystery, but I kind of do see how it's out there. And it's technically not said any more than it's said that Lashiel was the one who talked to him in the End of Changes that's brought up in Ghost Story. It's just mentioned that whoever it was the adversary, you know, like was one of the bad guys. And so that's why Uriel is able to balance the scales at the end of Ghost Story. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's still kind of an open question, but it doesn't keep me up at night as far as the fandom goes, you know?
Yeah. The other strong contender for Who Fixed Little Chicago is Mab, because Leah would have the obligation to save Harry's life, but she was also a she-sickle in Arctis Tor at the time. So Mab would have the ability to go in because she wouldn't have any negative feelings towards Harry or intentions, so she can get past his wards and be fine. And also she had the obligation to take up what Leah would have done, but couldn't.
And see, I just don't like that one because that's just fucking scary. That one would keep me up at night, where it's like, by the way, Mab could have gotten in your bed and ganked you at any time, which like Leah all but says, right? It'd be like, why do you think people haven't put snakes in your boots, silly child? It's like, because we could totally get in and fuck up your whole life. And somebody had to be looking out for you.
Mab couldn't have ganked him because she had, like what Cat Sith says in Cold Days, is that they have to have good intentions. And if they have bad intentions, they have to leave.
Well, except that in Changes, Leah does imply that there are creatures that could have crossed over into his place from the Never Never without worrying about his wards at all, which is why she planted her garden there.
Yes, but Mab couldn't have ganked him.
Sure. But, I mean, yeah, so like there are other rules there, but kind of the implication is that she could have had him ganked. So, like whether it was her own hand or she sent Cat Sith, like I think the effect would have been about the same. And that's one of those things that keeps me up at night, where it's like, please don't be that, because I don't need that kind of terror out of the Dresden Files. So,
Andreas, Jacob, do you have any thoughts?
Not really. Other than, oh no! It's tearing me apart, Lisa! That's a good meme.
Yeah, I don't really know. It's not something I've actually thought about. I don't know. I'm bad with this stuff because I'm just like, I just kind of take it on face value and don't really go crazy. I feel like this is a lot of crazy fan theories are because of Star Wars, because of, Luke, I am your father, and like, oh look, R2D2 is with Anakin, now it's here, and I'm just like, you know what? Not everything has to be connected. Let's just
And we know that Jim Butcher doesn't care about Star Wars at all.
I know, and that's one reason why I'm like, yeah, it's probably connected. Like y'all were talking about oh, Mac, right? And so why why can't he be multiple people? Like, there's some Star Wars things where they're, kind of multiple people, and we already know that certain gods are multiple people. So I'm like, okay, well, he's probably is the god of parties, but he's also probably something else too. Just like, we're probably going to have Dresden end up being like 4 different people by the end of this.
Well,
Time to collect those mantles.
Yeah, the joke for Dresden is when you start doing the Game of Thrones style naming and you realize all the different hats he does wear to get away from the mantle word. But, that he's Za Lord, which may end up being a mantle for all we know if Toot really does become a big fairy, and go from Tinkerbell to Peter Pan, so. But, yeah, it's funny that you're saying the Star Wars thing because now I'm like, shit, Bob is totally R2D2.
Right.
Except that he can talk, right? Because like R2D2's big thing is like 2 people in the whole fucking series can understand what he says. And so the whole time R2D2's like, no, really, guys, like this guy's a bad motherfucker. Like we should get out of here. And people are like, you silly robot. Whereas Bob is like, I guess they can tweak his mind, but he really kind of is a robot that's been passed down from the Dark Lord and people like that. So now I'm going to be over here with like, oh my God, Dresden Files is Star Wars for the next week. Thanks, Jacob. So
well, it could also be that like, okay, say Bob has been passed down and all this other stuff. Like maybe he can't say certain things because he'll know it'll fuck up the timeline. Like maybe that's why like he let Dresden fix Little Chicago and not say anything, because if he does, it'll be he'll be all like, oh look, we've got. If I say something, it'll screw up the timeline and I'll cease to exist somehow.
Well, and the way that you deliver that line is like, now I can totally see. So Dresden did fix it, and it's not nearly as complicated. He just slept walked. So he just did a sleepwalk and like, this is fucked. So he fixes it and then moves on with life. And it's like, anyway, yeah.
or the whole thing, like maybe he had it removed from his memory, like he did with the whole didn't he like have Molly take something out of his memory so he would forget
his suicide.
Kincaid? Yeah, so maybe something like that was like, hey, Molly, do this for me, even though it's bad. Do it for me, because Dresden isn't, opposed to doing bad things at all.
Right. Though the only flaw I have with that one is like there's just no motive, which means it's like, why would he even do that? But yeah, other than that, like that was brought up earlier in the show too, and I was like, yeah, that's super cool, especially if it's like, future Harry and Molly, aka Cowl and Kumori, come back in time. They go bypass the wards and fix it, and then future Kumori changes it. I'm sorry, I'm mixing theories now, but. It's kind of fun because it gives us something to speculate since we don't have a damn book. Butcher, come on, man. We're going crazy here. Look at the theories we've come up with. That's how crazy we are.
To get off that one, let's go to another one I think is has even less standing. There's this, as it's been called, the changeling child theory, is that Harry, or maybe someone else, had a child with Mab, and now Harry is going to be stuck raising it. Because, he gets a child every book or so now. But, I don't know. Like, apparently there's a word of Jim that he will only have 2 daughters. But what about a son?
Right. I mean, it's fun, and it's one of those things that'll answer some of the questions we talked about in previous shows, which is like, if the She get it on with Immortal, do they have a kid every time? Or do they have some way to control that somehow? And things like that. But... I think it's funny because if we just sort of like Dresden's going to have all these kids and then they're going to grow up with talent or be supernatural and special and significant, and it's like, is he breeding the Power Rangers? Is that how this is going to work out? Where it's like, instead of having the Scoobies that he's gotten all his allies over time, it's like, no, I just needed to fuck enough random shit to have enough kids who are old enough when the apocalypse happens to save the world. And it's like, I really don't think that's where Butcher's going with this one. But with the whole, like, he's got a kid with everybody theory, it's like, okay, well, he's still got a couple of years. How many kids can he have? And two of them kind of break the whole mortal barrier, because one is pretty clearly immortal, and one is, you know,
Bob.
Him and an angel got it on. Yeah. And then, so we don't know how that's going to age ultimately. And then, you know, if you have a she kid, technically, even if it ages like normal people, Mad can control time. So, like, at least in her realm. So the next time you do see the kid, he could be fighting him in a duel and be like, motherfucker, you're my kid. And then you've got some Mordred shit going on from King Arthur. And I don't want to think about that. That one, there's too much. So,
Yeah,
if you want to talk kids, especially like immortal children, you have to think of them as outside of time. So, you know, they could be born and then a day later in mortal time, they're 1,000 years old in, like, you know, immortal time. So they're full grown. So you might just be able to pop them out, like, you know, like 10 days, you got 10 different kids that are now 1,000 years old who can go right into battle with them.
Right. So instead of him and the 4 wardens, it's now him and his 8 kids who are all badass wizards that were raised by the fucking Queen of Air and Darkness. Like, that's why I'm like, no. Like, and unfortunately, like, Butcher has played with some things that are really hard to, like, for me, when I start theorizing them, it's like, when you introduce time travel in any way, shape, or form, the rules get funky. And when you introduce mind magic, or, you know, what he did in freaking, was it Deadbeat, where, you know, like, the whole Lash thing is revealed, and I'm like, see, the problem is, like, the cynic and skeptic and the scared person in me is like, this could all be a figment of his imagination the whole time now, because you've just shown that she can totally warp his entire perception. So, like, we can't trust anything that we see. And, like, then because you take that one gimmick and you turn it to 11, and all of a sudden everything changes. So,
yeah, what's gonna end up happening is he's gonna wake up one day and realize that, like, he gave in to Lash completely and is just a terrible person. You know, like the last, like, 8 books have just been in his own head because she's been controlling him to make him think he's a good person.
Well, and that's, like, I'm glad he didn't, and he kind of just did his thing and he dropped it and moved on. But, like, after reading Deadbeat the first time, I'm like, dude, how could you do that? Because now I've got to think about all his perceptions always and all this other shit. And it's like, he mostly used as a plot point, but it's like, when you bring in shit like that, when you realize, like, your whole life is an illusion, or at least a significant part of it, it's like, yeah, sure, she died in White Knight, but did she really? And then, of course, she had a kid with him somehow because angel sex, who knows, you know?
Okay, so I just had this is rolling back just a little bit. I did have a crazy fan theory just now. What if Mac is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and that's why
I don't see a horse anywhere.
still
He's out. Come on.
he's out of doing dirty shit for the White God.
Is
That's why he's supported
his called the Prancing Pony as well?
Right. When you're out as a horseman, you don't get to keep the company car, director. Seriously.
But he does have a really badass car, right? That's super fast and powerful.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
we've
like
never
it,
seen
but
that
I'm
again.
sure. I mean, there's, like, next to no evidence for it, but other than that, I like it.
I feel like
it's
we're going to meet one of the, like, especially in the big apocalypse, you know, the BAT, right? Like, I feel like we're going to meet one of the 4 horsemen or all the horsemen at some point.
So I feel like that's like putting a vote on the side. Like, he's an angel somewhere.
That's fair.
No longer.
I could see those Venn diagramming up. You know, not all writers of the apocalypse are angels, and not all angels are writers of the apocalypse. But maybe Mac is both. I dig it.
That'd be cool.
All right. So my last opinion on the whole changeling child theory is, I think it's just people really need everything to be in 3s. So obviously he needs to have a 3rd child somewhere, and that's, like, as much evidence as they have. Also, he had sex with Bab.
Right. Well, and it's going to be an M name, right? So, because we got Molly, Margaret. What's the male equivalent of Margaret? No, I'm just kidding. So,
Mark? I don't know.
Yeah, or I was thinking Morgan, Mordred, Morgana to get on that kick since we talked about
Malcolm.
There you go.
Malcolm.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. The last theory that we'll talk about is it's actually Josh's own theory. So yay, I get to mention his stuff. Is that mortal magic originated from the outsiders. So all the magic that Harry does and everything that came from outside. And his proof of that is that mortal magic is the only thing that can summon an outsider.
I like it, but I don't think he's right. And I think it boils down to the fact that magic is life, and magic is the building blocks of the universe, and outside isn't. It's the antithesis of those things, even more so than like light and dark and life and death, like light and necromancy. Like outside isn't the antithesis of life and death, it's the antithesis of reality. So it's null. It is nothing. For you D&D nerds, it is an annihilation sphere. That's like the next best thing to Mordite. So like it doesn't destroy you, it unmakes you. And so like there's just not nearly enough of that theme in the magic. And so maybe, but that's why I don't ascribe to that theory. So
one similarity is that what about black magic? Could it be related to Nemesis? And there's, at the very least, aesthetic connection between the black tentacles that the black staff has when Ebb uses it and the whole Mordite tentacle things. And someone asked Jim at some point, like, is there a connection between outsiders and the corruption from black magic? And Jim's response is, there's no proof of that. You don't know that. There's no proof. So I don't know.
I have been acting sketchy to throw you off.
Right. And I was going to say, like, thinking about it, actually, after all the time in the Dresden Files, like, here's one for EG and all you Dresden hyper archive nerds. Like, how many of his words of Jim's or his I'm not going to tell you that have eventually paid off so far? Because like maybe he's just like, that's a really good idea, but that's totally not the thing. But if I tell you that, then it'll narrow it down from 2 choices to 1, and that's too much information. Or is it really like you're on the spot? Because most people assume that it's like, oh man, we must have hit really close to the mark because he's dodging it. And it's like, well, yes and no, but maybe it's like you are totally the fuck off in left field, but if I narrow down one of 2 choices, you're going to know exactly what it is.
Yeah,
so
I would love a spreadsheet of words of Jim and whether they've paid off or not. But my sources say it's like, we don't know. And there's they look similar, and therefore that means they have to be related, right?
It's a distinct possibility, and I would go as far as to say maybe the Walking Stiff does the Walking Staff, because Stiff is way different, even though thematically similar. But the Walking Staff probably does have some connection to Mordite, like that. That does seem to fit up, and so like it does seem to have some kind of active component other than just responding to black magic. So, and like doesn't like Mother Winter and them, they have some crazy fucking shit in their house anyway. So if we didn't have Mordite read off, certainly Wormwood was there, which is kind of a big deal. And so it wouldn't be surprising to find out that these guys are like, oh yeah, we make shit out of Mordite all the time. Like, I know it's dangerous to you mortals, but like we've got a vat of Mordite in the back, like leaking
right
everywhere.
Here, look, you want to touch it?
Right, exactly. So like that part specifically, but just the whole like outsider magic is mortal magic. There may be a component to that because mortal magic, mortal magic mostly falls off the outsiders unless they're starborn, right? And so there may be some other component there, but I don't think that the source of Harry Dresden's magic is somehow outsiders and connected there.
Well, if, mortal magic came from outsiders, and like say dragons breathe fire and they're immune to fire, right?
Okay, and that's there, right? So Cold Case spoilers, for the love of God, if you haven't read Cold Case, maybe you should unplug your headset or something right now. But like, I mean, so in the duel between the cultists in Cold Case and Ramirez, they are using the same kind of magic for sure, right? Because they use water magic on him, and that's totally his specialty. But the reverse wasn't necessarily true either. Even though they're not strictly speaking outsiders, they're at least powered by it. So, that's we've seen it in action now. Like, that's what I'm saying. We don't have to speculate so much from things we half saw in in Deadbeat from an after action report from Lucio. We've literally seen it in action now, and they are probably both using magic, but I still I don't know. I'm less convinced the more I talk about it. So
the cold case thing is interesting. Like if you talk about like the Lovecraftian stuff as being insiders versus outsiders, then maybe the mortal magic comes from the insiders, and there's the cousins outsiders that want to come stomp on our shit.
Oh man, it's going to take me a while to get the analogies geared up for that, because like you could, so for those Mass Effect players, because that's something else that's in my life right now. Like if you go back to the original trilogy and you've got the whole Saren and Harbinger thing, like you could argue that that's what the sleeper is, because he's already on the inside and he's technically an outsider. And I'm assuming that's what you mean when you're saying insiders, because he's here. Yeah, I think the main thing that still kind of compels me is that, like Molly and Ramirez's magic definitely had an impact on even the cultists. And since they were being supercharged by being sleeper cultists, I would assume it's not that part wasn't the same. But maybe like the thing that is an open question and kind of makes me diffuse my own stuff is that thinking about like Warcry and other places where we've actually seen outsiders, like, what is their magic? Technically, I don't think we've seen anybody use it other than the sleeper cultists, because even Shark Face was all mental, and that's the indicative of the outsiders, is that they've got the mental whammy in spades, because they talk about it. Even what Cowl did in the Deeps was not Cowl per se as an outsider,
It's also what happened in Mac's bar in Cold Days, and
it's
like the thing that they seem to do is the whole mental thing. Although we did see He Who Walks Behind in Ghost Story flashback.
Right, but he didn't use any magic that we're aware of. And I mean, so they're a source of magic because he powered rituals, and that's what the whole Necronomicon is about. But we've never seen them. It's not like they cast Fireball. It's not like they use Fuego or something even remotely similar. The closest we've got is the cultist who threw some water spell at Ramirez that he easily threw back at them.
Well, see, like He Who Walks Behind, he did the ritual in Blood Rites, and then he also had that stipulation that he's always behind Harry, and so Harry does this 16-year-old thing of spinning around in order to fuck with him. And so otherwise he tears apart a person physically, but like he doesn't perform the magic, except he's still stuck with the walking behind him always. And there's obviously something magical and restrictive there. I don't know where I'm going with this anymore.
Yeah, and it's magical in the sense that it's not natural, but I mean, that is one thing that I would ascribe to the outsiders, that it's more like their physical properties are not the same as what you would expect from our physical world. So it's not, his always being behind you-ness isn't, strictly speaking, magical. It's not a spell or an ability that it keeps up. But for anybody who is familiar with the lore and the mythos, like the Hounds of Tyndalos, for example, they attack you from angles, and so his is a weirdness like that, where it's just like he is literally always just metaphysically behind you. And that's part of the weirdness of the Cthulhu mythos, is that shit like that, like they break reality because they are from something so alien that it is hard to even conceptualize. And stuff like that. So, but the fact, like, the more I think about it, like, we've never seen them throw any kind of magic other than those cultists that I can think of. And so I guess that's your ping pong, man. That's your riposte, is like, if there is some other kind of evidence or something other than the fact that, like, well, dragons are immune to fire and outsiders are immune to magic, So, because the way that I've always conceptualized the Starborn thing as well, since we don't really know anything, is like, in my head, it's not that Starborn are necessarily more powerful or that they necessarily have some secret in. It's like they put backspin on it. Like I can throw a ball to you and I can throw it really fast and hard, and that's one thing. But if I throw it really fast and hard and put a little bit of English on the ball, it's got all that much more momentum and it's that much more difficult to manage. And because the Starborn, it, like, at best, it's going to put them on the senior council level without the decades or centuries worth of experience, because in the Battle of Sicily, in the aftermath, and them running from the Red Court when the Red Court used outsiders, it took the senior fucking council to delay the outsiders. Like, that's how bad they are and how resistant to magic they are. So those are all kind of their open questions. And I mean, that could be it in our next crazy theory thing. It's like, what the fuck does Starborn mean? Maybe that's a whole episode or something, but
yeah,
you know.
And with as much fun as this one was, we're definitely going to do that again. I think with the whole mortal magic and outsiders connection, maybe we'll touch on that again when we ever do the Lovecraft episode and all of the research needed for that. But for right now, we've gone over an hour. We've done several of the craziest theories that were most popular, and I guess now we just have to plug all our stuff and then we can go. So Jacob and I do High Fantasy.
Yo.
And it's fun, and we're doing it next week. And then Jacob also does Great Scott. How are you doing on that?
Good. We're recording tomorrow. We normally record today, but schedules and stuff. But we are in season 5 of The Office. If you want to check that out, we're doing that. You can check us out at Broken Jars at XYZ. I'm at Jacob Ingalls on Twitter. If you want to get with me there,
And we still have Shylock's Gaming, and Dangerous to Go Alone is still uploading regularly, I believe. And we've got all the other stuff that past specials or 42 that you can listen to. So just check it out at Broken Jars at XYZ. It's all good. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.